Welcome to the Band Director Bootcamp podcast, the go-to place for busy band directors who want practical to build programs while maintaining balance in their lives. This podcast is brought to you by the Empowered Music Educator Academy, where we help directors like you find efficiency, sustainability, and impact in your teaching and leadership. And speaking of impact, our platinum sponsor, Kennelly Keys Music, has been serving musicians with a commitment to quality, reliability, and exceptional service. Whether you need top-tier instruments, expert repairs, or trusted advice, they've got you covered. Now, let's dive in and set the tempo for success.
Welcome to another episode of Band Director Bootcamp, the podcast with productivity and wellness tips for busy band directors who want practical strategies to build thriving programs while maintaining balance in their lives. I'm your host, Lesley Moffitt, and I'm really grateful to be sharing this platform with you. We know you don't have time to watch lengthy professional development webinars, so we create 20-minute tidbits with takeaways you can use to support you in this awesome career. This podcast is brought to you by the Empowered Music Educator Academy, where we help directors like you find efficiency, sustainability, and impact in your teaching and leadership. And speaking of impact, our platinum sponsor, Kennelly Keys Music, has been serving musicians since 1960 with a commitment to quality, reliability, and exceptional service. So whether you need top-tier instruments, expert repairs, or trusted advice, they've got you covered. But now we're going to dive into a topic today, which I'm not even as excited about the topic as I am just the fact that I'm having this conversation with an old friend. And I can say old because we're both hitting our 60s. Did you hit your 60s already?
I am 60, right on the money.
Oh, right. I got 3 months to go. So he's older than I am. Yeah. Just pointing that. But I first met Glenn Williams back in 1983 when we both arrived at Indiana University and we were part of the Marching 100. I was a little frightened kid who had, this is back in the early 80s. We didn't have the internet and all the cool things. We had a little trifold brochure that we got, and I had never set foot on the campus. And I show up at IU on my 18th birthday after my parents drove me in the Winnebago cross country from Seattle. And we arrived, and Mr. Kramer and Mr. England came and met us, and we started marching band camp. And Glenn was there that day. He was one of the first people I met on the Indiana University campus as a terrified kid on my 18th birthday. And Glenn, you were so kind and so nice to everybody, but it just felt like you were an immediate friend way back then. And it's been really cool to watch all you've done. And I'm so excited today to bring you on board today to talk and share your wisdom from all of your years of teaching. I know you've taught all the different levels, at high school levels, and you're working with colleges and with future teachers and mentor other teachers, along with the work you've done at the IU Summer Music Camp for, was that 30 years, I guess? And all the other things with the Blue Lake Fine Arts Camp and all the things. But the common theme here is when you talk about any of them, you just light up. And music education has been your life, but more importantly, the relationships and the communities you've built through music. I believe that you've, at the core of all of this, has been about, what value you bring to a whole community. So, Glenn Williams, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, Lesley, thank you for the invitation and thank you for that introduction. And I just want to share that I share those fond memories with you, not only in marching band, but playing in jazz band together. And I just want to do a quick shout out to you because your journey inspired me and kind of changed the trajectory of my personal health in such an amazing way. And I watch you and the amazing success that you're having right now as an author. You're finding your voice as a teacher, and just seeing that makes me elated for you, but it also inspires me to be a better me. So I'm going to start by saying just congrats to you for keep doing all the thing and the difference you continue to make.
Well, thanks. I'm living the dream.
Yeah.
Not always sure what I'm doing, but it's fun.
Yeah.
So as we are heading into summer, some of you sooner than others of us, some of us are still in school as of this recording, but that aside, at some point, there are times when we all need, as Glenn was saying earlier, something to breathe life into us. Life is hard. Teaching's hard. It is hard work. Living is hard sometimes. All of it. And Glenn today is going to talk to us about 3 specific books to really help you take some time, maybe this summer, professionally, personally, to do some reflection. And he'll talk to us about some big ideas in there. And then he's got some other strategies about helping us navigate hard things. So stay put. You're going to have some really awesome resources. Of course, we'll put the links or references in the show notes so you can access them. But right now, let's find out a little bit about Glenn. Maybe give us a little bit about your teaching background and what you did, and how you came to using these books, how they tie in for you, and then carry on from there.
Absolutely. So I taught in 2 different states, Michigan and Illinois, at 3 different high schools. And I had a variety of instructional leadership positions in addition to the classroom teaching that I was doing. So I had the opportunity to lead and work with adults, and as well as to lead and work with students. And in this current season that I'm in, this semi-retired phase, I'm seeing student teachers. So one of the books that I reread to prep for this year was an old gem, A Guide to Student Teaching in Band. And I read it years ago, and I reread it, and I can't tell you how energized I got just rereading this, just hearing the voices and seeing that. I'm like, oh yeah, I should do that. Oh yeah, I should do. Oh yeah, I should. So everything just kind of came into focus with this. And this book, just like the other 2 I'm going to recommend, are very quick reads. They're not heavy philosophically, and they're books that when people read them over the summer, they're going to come away reinvigorated and energized, ready to put some ideas into practice once the fall starts up again.
Well, cool. Talk us through each of the books, because if you could do us the Cliff Notes or the Glenn Notes here,
yeah.
And what things pulled you in for these?
Absolutely. So I'll start with one that's called The Last Lecture. And this is a quick book written by Professor at Carnegie Mellon University, Randy Pausch. And there's a tradition at Carnegie Mellon that when teachers retire, professors retire, they get to give a last lecture and share all their wisdom. He had a cancer diagnosis that caused him to give his last lecture earlier than most. And this book, The Last Lecture, the turn at the end is this is actually tips and traits on how to live and be a successful human being that he was giving to his kids who were young at that time. And this book is a book that's still required reading. Every freshman who goes to the campus of Carnegie Mellon University reads this, and they have book discussions about this book. But just some tips from that book. It talks about how to embrace challenges, how to live with gratitude and purpose. It talks about the power of connection and relationship. It talks about focusing on fundamentals. And then one of the best points for me, how will you define your dash? So the dash meaning on your gravestone, your birth date and your death date, there's a dash in between those 2. So he's intentional in trying to encourage people to define that dash. How are you going to live your life in a way that defines that in a positive manner?
I like that phrase. It makes me give pause. It's just one of those, it's a quick way. Yeah. All right. So talk to us about one of the others.
Yeah, and the next book I've used actually as a staff resource development book twice with high school leadership teams, because the transformational practices that are found in this book will change your personal and your professional life. The book is called The Art of Possibility, and it's written by Rosamund and Benjamin Zander. She is a practicing psychologist therapist, and he's a conductor. And so the 2 of them partner together, and the themes are just absolutely amazing. One of the themes is called giving an A. So just the power of when you're working with a student, saying to them right out of the block, hey, I've already given you an A. And that releases this grade and comparison feedback and helps you work just on getting better, through the process. One of the things he talks about is the ability to lead from any chair. So I love to build my high school bands the bands were the best when the 12th chair clarinetist was as good or better than the first chair clarinetist. And every chair had a leader. It wasn't about the first chair being the leader. Everybody led. And he goes deep into that principle on how every person can develop as a leader. A thing I did with my staff, there's a principle in the book called Rule Number 6. And the principle is don't take yourself so damn seriously. And humor and laughter are essential, and talk about eliminating competitive measurement. But one year for my staff, I had magnets made that said Rule Number 6. And the instructions were to put them on the door of their office before they walked into the classroom. And I wanted them to smack that the way the Notre Dame football players play like a champion today. So every time before they walked in the rule, I wanted them to think Rule Number 6. Don't take yourself so seriously, right? Take your craft seriously. Don't take yourself seriously, right? And then another principle, which I found really impactful as a leader, is called being the board. Sometimes in schools and in systems, when rules change and things change, it can be really frustrating and drive people nuts. So rather than trying to fight the rules of the game, think of yourself as the game board. Lay yourself out as the fundamental basis. And then you talk about the things you're in control of that you can react to, and then you being the framework rather than being manipulated or controlled by the framework was really, really helpful to me, and helpful to me in coaching adults and how to navigate these things when they happen in schools.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Good stuff in there.
Great book, and good enough I read it twice. We did it over, there was an 8-year gap because so there was staff turnover, but it's that kind of book. It's one you can come back to. And then just real quick, the guide to student teaching in band, it's designed for a first year teacher like to student teach. But I'll tell you what, after my 36th year of doing this, I read and just remembered things like something as simple as try to teach one thing for 10 minutes. So going deeper into one thing in the music, picking a concept and teaching it to the kids and teaching it thoroughly rather than doing the things band directors tend to do. Fine, we're going to make measure 27 to 35 better. We're going to fix notes and rhythms, and then we're going to move on. Pick a concept and teach the kids referentially in depth about what's in the score. And that can just be like really liberating.
T. Andre Fagan is our professor at Central. And we just went last week took my advanced band, and he did a clinic with my kids. He was phenomenal, but he did that. Even though we only had an hour, he took a concept and he taught that concept in depth, and he was captivating, but he just modeled that. He modeled what you're talking about in this book. And we walked away from there better for it. And we've come back to that in my classroom multiple times because it wasn't just fleeting moments about how this particular dynamic. I mean, it was probably one of the most meaningful clinics I think my band's ever had.
And what was your students' response to that?
They were riveted.
Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing. He was drawing diagrams on there, having them singing, doing all the things. And they loved it. And they sounded better when he was done with them. And they brought that back to the classroom. And we talked about that concept in another piece of music. And I mean, it's had lasting impact, but that's what he did. He went deeper for a short amount of time, 10 minutes or whatever it was here, and then 10 minutes there kind of thing. But it was very powerful. And I'm that's going to have me rethink that when I'm a clinician.
Yeah.
I always talk big concepts and all of that, but what can you do if you have 10 minutes differently? I don't know. Yeah.
I love that. And we're a profession, Lesley, that I think confuses activity with achievement. Like we tie ourselves to the pacing monster and we have to go fast and it has to be blindingly quick and all that. But giving the kids a chance to consolidate their learning and to chew on it and actually think about it and practice it, right? One of the things I learned on a Blue Lake tour in Europe is that the French word for rehearsal was repetition. And that kind of smacked me over the forehead, right? Because especially students, middle school, high school students, they need repetitions to ingest the learning, right? To kind of let it simmer some.
Yeah. Having taught high school for so long and only being third year in middle school, I'm finding that even more repetition is necessary because those fundamental, 89,000 things they have to think of when they're just starting. And so they need 89,000 repetitions if they're only going to think about each thing once. Right. And so that's been another concept I have to keep working on. I need to go back and read these books again. You're right. Student teaching, that one sounds really
a great book. And Lissa Fleming, who is now Lissa May, who was at IU when we were there. She just retired as the associate dean. She was one of the authors of this book and the one who pushed it through. So it's Lissa's voice and her organization and her structure on what makes learning and teaching relevant. So really, really worth the read.
Well, that makes it even better. I didn't know she was involved in that. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, before I finish up with a few more questions, I just want to take a minute to give a shout out to our podcast sponsors, the Empowered Music Educator Academy and Kennelly Keys Music.
As band directors, we know that success is all about preparation, whether it's in the classroom, on the podium, or behind the scenes. That's why the Empowered Music Educator Academy is here to help you master time management, reduce stress, and create sustainable routines that keep both you and your program thriving. And when it comes to ensuring your musicians have access to top quality instruments and services, Kennelly Keys Music is the name to trust. From rentals and repairs to expert advice and outstanding customer service, Kennelly Keys is committed to keeping your program running smoothly. Visit KennellyKeysMusic.com today to explore their offerings and experience the difference of working with a company that truly cares about music education. Now, back to the show.
All right, we are back with Glenn Williams, and we're wrapping up today. We were talking before the podcast about collaboration and what, we all hear the word all the time. It's on rubrics that we're evaluated on and all that stuff. But you brought to my attention something to talk about in this very space. So let's do that, because talk to us about that.
Yeah, an educational theorist named Robert Garmston created what he called the 7 norms of collaboration. And they're game changers in terms of a learning culture and establishing things in a room to make professional protocols. So if you're in a school or you're on learning teams or PLCs or whatever they call it, and at the beginning of the year, you're setting up rules of the road, this would be a great time to pull out these Garmston norms of collaboration to reference these and kind of pitch some of them out in the room to see how your colleagues think about them. There's 3 I want to share specifically. And one of them is the last one. It's presuming positive intent. So many times when we're interacting with other adults, we kind of rush down the road and we draw these conclusions that really aren't true. But if you hear somebody say something or you hear something, if the first thing you do is presume their intentions are positive, that's going to reframe your interactions and change how you approach both the human being and the situation. Another one of the 7 that I really like, he calls probing for specificity. So when a student or somebody lays out a concept, rather than saying yes, no, or shutting it off, ask a question to go a little bit deeper. Elaborate on that. Tell me a little bit more on that. Expand your thinking. Can you explain that to me a little bit differently so I can understand it more? So these things invite the students and the other humans into the conversation. And Lesley, it lets them feel heard. Their ideas are expanded. And especially with students, it helps them work it out. Right? Sometimes they're still thinking through these concepts and have to talk through them as they're presenting them. So that moment of verbal processing can be really magical as they're leading into a concept. And then the last one in terms of listening is paraphrasing. And paraphrasing is one, Lesley, I'm forbidden to use at home. So if my wife and I are having a discussion about something and I say, so what I hear you saying is that, she'll smack me over the head with a 2x4 or throw a pan at me or something like that.
Yeah, Terry.
But paraphrasing with a student and paraphrasing with another adult done well is actually a sign to them that you understand what they're saying.
Or that you don't understand, right? Because sometimes when you do that, they go, wait, that's not what I meant.
Yes, and that pushes the conversation even more. And elegant paraphrasing isn't saying, well, what I hear you saying is you can just restate the topic with different words to try to get at that. But I love like what you just added there. Yeah, if my paraphrase is miserable, the person who's talking to me is going to say, no, man, you're nowhere near close. And that's going to give us a chance to go even deeper. And that, again, creates that sense of understanding, that commonality in the conversation.
You know, my middle daughter, she'll never listen to this, so it's fine to tell you. Don't tell anybody else, though. But she would get like that. And when we would have something, I would say something to her and I would notice the response wouldn't be what I was expecting. And one time I said, what did I just tell you or ask you to do? And her response was, you don't want me to have any fun, or whatever it was. She was hearing like total, I told her to go clean her room and she heard, you don't want me to go to my friend's house, or you don't like my friends, or whatever it was. And it was just, that was eye-opening for me. I'm like, no, that's not what I said. Yeah, you did. No, I said, go clean your room, but I wanted to go to Barbara's. So you don't like my friends. And that was her conclusion. So I lived that. That's why when you said that, I was like,
Well, and Lesley, you just unpacked a wonderful topic. Schools are full of that during the course of a day, right? Communication is not about what I say. It's about what you hear. Mm-hmm. So if I say something and I may say it right and elegant and I'm absolutely in the right and you didn't understand the message, my approach is I tend to put that mirror on me. That's on me for not communicating well in a manner that would help you understand what the conversation was about.
It takes some reflection, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit.
And the heat of the moment. Well, gosh, you've brought a lot to the table. I had like 50 other things to talk about, but time. Yes. I put the time limit on, but we're going to keep it that way because I know a lot of people listen to this during specific things. But Glenn, thanks for bringing to us these, that principle, of course, of the collaboration piece, but also 3 specific pieces of literature out there that can help us personally and professionally in without it being super cumbersome, because it sounds like very digestible stuff to do and very practical, because if it served you well for all those years,
Yeah, very, very much so. And more than once, these are books that I've read multiple times, all 3 of these books.
Well, that's pretty high praise then. So you guys check them out, take it down, maybe go sit by the pool. I don't know. Sit outside, do whatever, but check them out if you're looking for some ways to breathe fresh life into yourself. Thanks a million for being here today, Glenn.
Thanks for the invite. It is wonderful to see you, and even better to talk to you. And again, congrats on your journey. You're absolutely nailing it, Lesley.
Thank you. That's a wrap on today's episode of Band Director Bootcamp Podcast. Remember, success in music education is not just about what happens on the podium. It's about taking care of yourself and setting up systems that work for you. At the Empowered Music Educator Academy, we're here to help you do that. So go ahead and check out our resources at empowerededucator.com. Thanks for listening. Keep making a huge difference in kids' lives through the magic of music education.
That's a wrap on this episode of the Band Director Bootcamp Podcast. Remember, success in music education isn't just about what happens on the podium. It's about taking care of yourself and setting up systems that work for you. The Empowered Music Educator Academy is here to help you do just that. So be sure to check out our resources at empowerededucator.com. And of course, a huge thank you to Kennelly Keys Music, our platinum sponsor, for their unwavering support of music educators like you. Whether you need instruments, accessories, or expert advice, their team is ready to help. Thanks for listening and keep making music happen.